Good evening and welcome to another edition of Filmnut. I am your host, Jeff Schubert. Glad you can join us. Well, for those of you who watched the show before, you've heard me say many times that the goal of this show is to talk about the making, marketing, and distribution of film. Also, over the years, we've gotten into TV and new media. But primarily, the core goal when we started the show was to talk about those things, the mechanics, as it pertains to film. If I had to pick one episode in all this time that we've done this show, maybe 109 or 10 episodes, I lose track now, that best hit that core value of the show, the core, what we started out to do here, that talked about the mechanics, the making, the marketing, a little bit of everything, was educational, was informative, was very funny, I'd have to pick my first interview with Michael Lembeck. That's saying a lot, because we've had a lot of great guests on here. So, after you've seen this show, Tonight Live, go back in the archive. We showed a little clip of it before we came live, and watch that whole interview. It is fantastic, it is entertaining, and it's very informative. If you're a director or an actor or a writer or a producer, it's a must. Even if you're a fan of film, trust me, you will laugh and learn and have fun watching this interview. Let's see if you can live up to that build-up I'm giving him now for this interview. Wow. So let's get to it with him. Michael Lembeck, my guest, an Emmy-winning director. He won the Emmy, actually, for directing the episode, the one after the Super Bowl on Friends. He went on to direct before and after that, 299 other episodic sitcoms, including shows like Everybody Loves Raymond and Mad About You. After sitcoms, he has gone on to feature films, including The Santa Claus 2 and 3, Connie and Carla, and the just-released film Tooth Fairy, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Ashley Judd, Julie Andrews, Billy Crystal, Seth Macfarlane, and in my opinion, the person who might just steal the film, even though they're all great, Stephen Merchant. Fantastic. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome back to the program Mr. Michael Lembeck.
Well, thank you, sir. It's really fun to be here, and as I look at myself, there's a lot shorter hair. I was on my way in that show to like shoulder-length hair.
Right.
And I haven't had hair this short in about 35 years. I'm only 38.
That's right.
But it's kind of fun having short hair again.
Looking good short, look good long too.
Thank you.
That surprised me more than this for some reason.
When I showed up with shorter hair?
With the longer hair.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone through various stages of long hair, but the last time I was here, I continued to let it grow like another 5 or 6 inches. It was pretty crazy there for a while.
Pretty crazy.
But it was fun. It was fun. I hadn't hair like that since the late 60s.
Hey, if you've got the range and flexibility, who am I to...
Right. And I'm sorry, actually talking about it, I feel guilty.
That's right, that's okay. So Tooth Fairy, it's just been out a few days.
Yeah, we just came out.
Just came out. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
You know, I would have made an error in judgment and maybe not seeing it, thinking that it was just a kid's movie, but I have to tell you, I saw it and I loved it. I was laughing pretty regularly throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, it's really entertaining. You know, one of the things when I first went into Fox, after having read the initial draft, and pitched them, you know, my version of what I'd like to do if I was given the opportunity to make this movie, was it had to have a really strong emotional bottom. It had to have really strong thematic material. It needed to be extremely entertaining, wildly funny, and a story well told. And I knew that I wanted to surround Dwayne, where I gave him the opportunity, with really great players. But the fact that I could get on the phone and talk to, and then send the script to, and then talk to again people like Julie Andrews and Billy Crystal and Stephen Merchant and Ashley Judd was so thrilling to me, because I now knew Dwayne is going to have the time of his life, because he's going to be working with, as we always want, players better, which brings our game up.
Absolutely.
I recall the night in the parking lot where we shot the movie in Vancouver. We were leaving after a day's work, and the next day was going to be the Billy scene. It's about a 6-7 minute scene in the movie.
The Billy Crystal scene.
Yeah, and he plays Jerry, as you know, he plays Jerry, who supplies Dwayne, once he's a tooth fairy, with all the supplies he'll need in order to gather the tooth.
To be an effective tooth fairy.
Yeah, invisibility spray, shrinking powder, all that stuff. Actually, it's invisibility spray and shrinking paste.
Shrinking paste, right.
And for those of you who see the movie, the tube that he sucks on in order to get his shrinking paste is Philadelphia cream cheese. Just so you know. So, oh, so he really did do that. So he says to me, he says, Lem, you know, so tomorrow we're doing the Billy scene. I'd really love to have a little bit more back and forth, because it's very much Billy carries the ball in the scene. Dwayne's character reacts. But because he was working with Billy, and Billy's such an iconic person and comedic genius, he wanted to have more back and forth, which would be more fun for him. I said, yeah, okay, I'll take a look at it tonight, because I always do a little writing in the night before the next day's work, knowing full well, in this particular case, I really didn't have any intent to change it because it was perfect as it was. Plus, the night before, Billy and I had whacked it back and forth, and we improvised, and we crystallized it, so to speak. So, to his credit, Dwayne gets on the floor with Billy that day, and we begin to just settle in and get a look at our first master, and I roll the cameras all the time because you never know what you're going to get. And the moment the scene started, you literally see Dwayne go, whoa, I'm in the scene with Billy Crystal, this is fantastic, and just start lobbing the ball in. And realizing, yes, of course he should have the ball as much as possible. And it was such a joy to watch, not only because it was Dwayne enjoying Billy and Billy putting on his comedy concert, but you saw him begin to listen and focus and intend on the scene being really wonderful as soon as they started. You just saw the guy go, oh, this is so much fun. This is so great dealing with Billy. And he was so generous, and he was in it, and he was wonderful.
Yeah, and if you're a big fan of Billy Crystal, you'll love him in this. You know, iconic. I agree. I think he's one of our more underappreciated talents over the generations because he's so insane.
Well, you think about
the breadth of his work, and
well, of course, if you think of him just as a host,
right?
You know, to host the events that he did.
I mean, he's the standard for the Oscars.
He's absolutely the standard for the Oscars. But he's just wonderful. You know, when you see him in the Broadway show, the one-man show he did, 700 Sundays, it's remarkable. It's a love letter to his parents. It's 2.5 hours of Billy telling stories and doing characters, and it's, what, can 4 people do that on the planet? It's just, he's just extraordinary, and he's so nice. One of the great things about doing Tooth Fairy is the amount of niceness. It's overwhelming. You know, when I was whittled down to one of 3 directors who were going to get the part of director in Tooth Fairy, we all met with Dwayne a little bit. And the script was okay. It was, the writer who got it greenlit was not on yet. And it was really a promissory note written. It was good premise, good conceit, but not a lot of story there, not a lot of stuff going on. And after about 90 minutes with Dwayne, I realized how much I loved this guy. He is so full of grace. Every day he's grateful for his life. He knows from whence he comes. He knows his limitations. He's extremely passionate, enthusiastic. He wants to do as well as he possibly can. He's accessible to every person that approaches him. You want a picture? Let's go. You want an autograph? I'm right here. He's just that character of his, that grace that he exhibits was breathtaking. And that was the moment I realized, oh, I gotta get this. I gotta get this job. I gotta fix the script. I gotta put my version up there.
That's great, you know. And I want to get to when I am, but for you, Billy, last word on you, Billy Crystal's fans out there. I saw a little bit of Miracle Max from Princess Bride in his character. Which,
we talked about that a little bit, and it's hard not to see a little bit of Miracle Max in this. But you know, there were some creative people who wanted Billy to look a certain way, and when the hair and makeup people start to come into his room, we start to fool around with stuff. That 60s hippie little piece of soul patch, and you know, it was just. His wing is broken a little bit, his vest is a little tattered. It was just perfect.
Yeah, it worked really well.
Yeah.
Dark Side of the Force would like to ask, as a director, how do you work with actors who have different levels of experience and methods of training and rehearsing?
Okay, that is such a great question, and it's something that I speak to all the time when I speak to young or up-and-coming directors or people who want to be directors, or even just people in our business in general having to do with what it is that the man on the captain's seat does. And it's a particularly interesting and dynamic and daunting challenge to walk onto a soundstage and realize all these actors come from different disciplines, in addition to which they're all extremely insecure. And it's a fear-driven, oh, God, I hope I'm good enough today for everybody to think I did well. And actors 1 and 2 may approach how they work that day in one way, and actors 3 and 4 in the scene may be completely different, diametrically opposed, antithetical to the way A and B work. And my job is to do the following. First, walk onto the soundstage, and in the first 60 seconds, take the emotional temperature of the room. Who needs a break early? Who needs to pick up their pants at the cleaners? Who had a fight with their wife last night? Whose mom passed away last week? Whose dog disappeared in the middle of the night? And figure out how ready they are to work. Then once we start, you sit with an actor who doesn't want to rehearse. Never does. You know, Tim likes to just go. Ellen likes to just go. Marty Short likes to just go. and then you like to sit, and then they're in a scene with somebody who needs to rehearse.
Right.
And that's a very challenging moment. So you just have to find a way. And by the way, the director spends the day basically putting on the hat of 15 different therapists. Whatever the therapy of the moment is, that's the hat you put on in order to get insecure people through the day. And by the way, you know, I am full of beans, full of enthusiasm, and I know what I want every moment of the day, except the moments that I don't. And when I don't let it become a frightening moment. I am not an autocrat. I will actively seek out somebody and say, here's my problem. If I shoot it this way, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to, or, you know, if he wears that shirt and this happens to it, maybe we're better off with the other color, or help me with his hair. There's something about his hair today. Go to the wise man or woman. Find the person who at that moment has the wisdom and the experience and are enlightened enough to help you with that answer. But when it comes to this stuff, I'm pretty much on my own, having to deal with two people in a scene. He likes to rehearse. She doesn't want to rehearse. Everybody's waiting around. What are we going to do? You find the way in. You just find the way in. And that's a daunting thing. It's one of the first directing job I ever did in television. And you may have heard this before, but I really did do this. On a pad, I made checks every time I was asked a question. And at lunch, I had over 200 checks. And that was the point at which I realized, what am I doing? What was I possibly thinking that I could direct people? This is a half hour. It's only 22 minutes of material, and I have 225 questions on the first day of work. I have to run in front of a bus. I'm never going to make this.
Well, let's talk about the Tooth Fairy. You know, timing in comedy is so important, and especially in so many of the scenes between the Stephen Merchant character, Tracy, and the Rock's character, the Tooth Fairy. If you're working with them and they have two different styles of taking or processing information, how did you get that timing down? Because it was there and it was so vital to the success.
I'll tell you a couple of things. This is what it looked like when Dwayne and Stephen were on the stage together. We had already spent some time in my room on the weekend, kind of getting up to speed on what we're going to do, and like I said about Billy, you know, getting Stephen Merchant into, he might do it this way, we'd fix the writing a little bit, and letting them play a little bit and find what the conflict was between them. And I realized, oh my God, I have my own midnight run. I have De Niro and Grodin, and they're going to bicker like this all movie long. I could not be happier. And they loved doing it. They were like two petulant twin brothers. But the great thing about these guys was, so they come to the floor, and we talk a little bit, and we kind of set, I don't want anybody acting yet, just let's walk around, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Okay, we're going to light. Ultimately, I'm going to get back to them, and we're going to go work in the corner and get ready. But I would be on the set, they would leave, and I'm talking to my DP and my AD and getting things prepared. And I look over the corner, and they're the two tall guys. Dwayne is 6'3", Stephen's 6'9". And they're hitting each other and flailing away and laughing at each other. And you can just see they can't wait to get back to me and show me how they've redone the scene. It's the two bad 7-year-old twin boys you never wanted. And then they come back and they say, watch this. And I'm thinking, what does that have to do with the scene? Stop having so much fun. That's what happened to these two guys. They loved each other. And Dwayne, God bless him, again, jumped on this train really fast. When Stephen began to as the character of Tracy, give in the business, Dwayne started giving it to him right back. And instead of becoming passive, as he might now that he's a fairy and sometimes only 6 inches tall, the thing that Dwayne loved to do was be pissed off all the time as the 6-inch guy, and when he had a chance to, give Tracy the business. And when they were bickering with each other, it was, as you saw, so delightful. But it was born of the two of them standing in the corner, you know, rewriting and redirecting the scene, and they're bringing it back to Dad. And Dad going, oh, God, guys, all right, go to your rooms, and Dad'll fix this.
For people watching, so...
And by the way, their contribution was way above and beyond what was on the page and what was in my head.
So Tracy, he played The Rock's case manager, because The Rock gets sentenced to be a tooth fairy for 2 weeks for crushing the dreams
of children.
Just so people kind of get the feel what their dynamic was. You know, I've heard before they say, what, 90% of directing is casting. Here is an example of great casting because, you know, as we go on in film and decade after decade, you know, we see stories that are done before, or we see certain formulas play out. If the acting isn't there, it won't work. You know, when the acting is there, it works brilliantly.
Well, I would offer this. And yes, whatever it is, 80%, 85%, 90%, always get this wonderful feeling of, whew, when I realize I have a fantastic cast, because what they're going to bring to it is essence of, and the rest is, I better have my toolkit ready to maximize everybody's opportunity to make this well. However, having said that, and I'm sure you and all the viewers know this, you can have who some would arguably consider the 8 greatest actors in the history of the planet working in a movie. If the story isn't well told, if the writing isn't good, it will not matter. Then what happens is you disconnect and you're just watching, oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins, what a good actor. I'm not invested in this movie or story at all, but I remember him, he's a good actor because I saw him in. Right? It all starts with the word. I revere the word. I mean, coming from the theater, my father came from the theater, I grew up and I maintain that aphorism, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage, could not be more true.
Well, speaking of writers, this project, I believe, had 4 or 5 writers, separate from the person whose story it was?
However long ago this script was originally written, it had the first 2. Then some years pass and it's not selling and they bring in the next 2.
Gotcha.
And then the more time passes, and by time we all come on board, yet another writer is hired, in this case, Randy Mayhem Singer, who wrote Mrs. Doubtfire. And she did the draft that got us greenlit, and she did yeoman duty. Yeoman duty. And
then what you brought to the creative table was, in terms of...
God, I hope a lot. Nothing.
You know what I mean? You talk about pitching your version of it, right?
Yeah. So but remember, when I go into audition for the role of director, Randy's not with us yet. I'm going off of what I told you before, was a promissory note. Fun concept, but not a lot of emotional bottom, not a lot of good story there, not even that entertaining. It was just fraught with problems. So when a director goes in to pitch what he thinks might work and solves the problems, my job is not to underline the problems, but to find solutions and solve them. So I go in and I pitch my version, and as I said last time I was here, I sit with the executives and the producers and I talk about comedy tone and emotional bottom and possible actors and what the score might be and what it should look like and comedy tone and all this kind of thing. And that's what I hope to put on the screen.
And what I recall from last time, and even just a few minutes ago, is the emotion and also caring about the story and not so much always it being about the bells and whistles of the
No. For me, it's never about the bells and whistles. Right. It is literally about making sure that the audience has a rooting interest in the characters and that they're utterly invested in the characters and the story. Because if they're not, the word I used before was a disconnect. That's all that happens. If you can't get the audience to want to be with those people on the screen, then you've got nothing.
Bottom would like to ask, being a director who is also
Bottom,
yeah.
Like the character from Midsummer Night's Dream, Bottom?
Actually, it's short for Bottom Boy, but that sounds a lot better.
That's more than I need to know. All right.
Let's see, being a director who is also an actor, do you find it hard not to be critical about an actor's performance? I think as a director, it's hard.
Well, if I ask him something back now, will he type in real time? Because I'm not sure about what he's asking.
Okay.
Are you asking me if I'm being critical about a performance in the movie I'm directing, or critical about a performance as myself and audience being in the movies?
Okay, Brian, you'll relay that to us when that comes through. Let's get to the next IM while we're waiting for that.
We'll dig that out of the chat room. It'll take a second to get around to it.
Okay.
Lumpful Metal, how did you convince...
Lump full of metal?
Just Lumpful Metal.
I think that was my nickname.
Oh yeah, Lumpful Metal. There you go.
Lemful Metal. By the way, in the Yiddish theater I went as Lemful Metal.
Let's see, how did you convince Dwayne to get into a tutu?
When you read the screenplay, it says he sprouts wings and his shorts and t-shirt that are his bedclothes the evening he does this turn into a pink tutu. So when the actor comes on board, there's no mystery that this has to happen. Now, he can come in and say, well, I wouldn't wear a tutu, I'd wear jeans and a t-shirt, or it should be blue, or, you know, I want to cover my arms, but Dwayne embraced this outfit like nobody I've ever seen.
A little too much, huh?
He loved being in it. As a matter of fact, the day he met Julie Andrews was on the set in full pink tutu, and it was just like he was wearing his workout shorts and t-shirt. He's so comfortable with himself, and nobody looks like him in the tutu, as anybody who will see the movie will see. And it's funny. It's funny. And he got how funny it was, and so he embraced it.
Now let me ask you a question about directing him. I saw him in some interviews talking about how he had no ice skating experience.
Right.
And how they had to use harnesses for him in all those scenes. So how was that for you technically setting up and shooting the hockey scenes?
It was, again, daunting because we sent Dwayne off to get some skating experience. And what I wanted is, at the very least, I need him to be able to skate from point A to point B. I can take it from there. But a few days in, he took a very, very bad spill. He had had the terrible accident when he was shooting Game Plan with a torn Achilles. It freaked him out. He did not want to put anybody, including himself, at jeopardy, but mostly the movie was at stake. So we all talked about it, and I said, okay, so my job now becomes, how can I shoot hockey, in which he's in every scene, and make you believe that he's skating? Everybody who sees the movie believes that he's skating. He was always on some form of traveling device made out of metal that we pushed him around in, all different sizes to give me the ability to shoot him in different sizes. In addition to which, I had my key grips and guys create for me 4 different kind of sleds to put the camera operator on. What we called a puck cam. Another one in which he could be on his knees and handhold. A bigger one in which you could actually put on sticks, a camera, and shoot using a joystick. About 4 of those. So day 2 of the skating was my greatest epiphany. I realized when I shoot in opposition to his movement, it looks like gliding. Because all Dwayne was doing was, he had on these kind of hiking boots, and he would just walk. And I had to make it look like he was being graceful skating, or actually really moving down the ice. So I found that everything he did, if I went the other way, and the hardest thing for me to do was in a montage where he skates by himself. And that's the day I realized that's the key here. And I was really prepared. We handpicked the ice skaters, all ex-pros, college all-stars. I had the guy who choreographed all the stuff in Miracle, lay everything out, and then we would do it together, make sure the story was being told. I had 2 former big hockey thugs, fighters, as his skate double, and they taught him so much. They were great, and do all the big stunts. And when one sees the movie, just remember, when you see him skating, the way he's skating, his feet were never on the ice. And I defy you to tell me that, really?
Right.
How can that be?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see, Bottom, part 2.
Yes.
Critical about actors you're directing on set.
Okay. By definition, if you look in the dictionary, next to the word director, it should say create a safe environment. So one thing I'll never be, obviously, in person on the stage in front of others, is critical of an actor. Never, ever, 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 ever. We are all extremely insecure people, and we need to know we're doing well all the time, or we can't do our best. There are some that are so enlightened and so elevated that they don't need that, but most are different. So I love up my actors. I love them anyway. It's why I wanted to be a director. All day long. Everybody has the best time they've ever had. It's what I do. I love my job, and I want them to love their job. If they're not doing well, they must never know it. I must make them feel all the time it's the director's job, like they're doing really well, we're having fun, and they are being a success. When I get to the privacy of my own home, and if I want to tell somebody how my day was, and I want to talk about anything critical about an actor, I don't know that critical would be the word. I would say, she really struggled with the scene today, but we got it. Or most of it was good, but she never landed the big emotional moment. Or, boy, he really sold the jokes well, but he was pushing so hard it took a little bit longer. But that's about it. I'm not critical of actors, particularly my actors. I walked amongst them for over 20 years, and I know how hard it is. Every time you walk into an audition, you're basically naked in front of people that don't give a shit, except that you're going to make their lives easier because you can deliver the scene. They don't really care about you. They care about you as a piece of business, and they want you to do the role for them so their job gets easier. So my job in the room then is to make sure they have a good time while they're auditioning and they feel loved and that they're doing well. And the same thing applies on the floor.
I'm going to guess also that before you work day 1 with an actor, you've done so much research on them and rehearsed that you pretty much know what you're going to get. And it's
when you hire Julie Andrews or Billy Crystal, right, or Ashley Judd, you know what you're going to get in terms of their skill set. These people are bringing great, great skills to the floor.
Right.
I still have to do my job with them.
Right.
You know, it's like going back to, we were talking about Mel Brooks before. When Mel came in to do Mad About You, the first time I ever walked towards him to give him an adjustment in a scene that was a comedy scene, as I'm walking towards him, the little voice in my head is saying, "Get out, dive, dive. What are you thinking? Who do you think you are? How could you be so pretentious to think you could give one of the comedy gods a note?" And by the time you land there, you realize, that's my job.
Yes.
And by the way, when he's done with the scene, he finishes the scene, I'm the first person he looked at because he wants to know how he did. Not only can he write and direct, he appreciates the role of the director. And if he trusts you, which I, again, answering your question, bottom boy, can't even say that without images that disturb me.
Yeah.
I'm hearing laughing, and the band is laughing. You know, that's another thing. So the job is, you gotta, you know, I've worked with dames,
right?
You know, from that have been knighted, and you got to do the job.
But and what I meant to say was, you know, in terms of the critical factor of actors is just, as the director, as someone who's familiar with their work, you know their strengths and weaknesses going through.
Yes,
so,
you know
so you're not surprised.
But you know the strengths and weaknesses as a product.
Yes.
You don't know the strengths and weaknesses as a human being.
Right.
And you get on the floor, and it's 14, 16 hours a day, and people get tired, people get irritable, people get terrible phone calls, people don't like the person they're working with. So that's the work. Right. That's more work than anything. They're going to bring their skills, but look, what also happens is, somebody gets on the set and you say, okay, let's run the scene, and you realize, oh my God, I don't know what they did last night, but that's the opposite of what they should be doing. Right. What do I do now? You got to find a way in. That's the job. It's a cool job.
And what has there been a time, is it always easy to find the way in? Is it always like on the moment?
Well, you know, it's like if Marty Short comes to the stage and you do a rehearsal and he does something, and you're thinking, oh my God. You know, one of the ways in with Marty is to go the other way. So you finish the scene and he knows he does this. He finishes the rehearsal. I say, okay, Marty, bigger. And he knows that he's way too big. Right. He always has to rein it back because he has more fun than anybody. Right. You just find a way. Right. You know, a couple of times Dwayne came in with a notion as to what the scene should be. And, you know, you talk about, you know, that's valid and that's I think that'll work for the scene, but I have another thought. Hear me out. And because he is who he is, he just goes, he opens up, he takes it all in, and then he does it better than it was in my head. And he was really surprising. People who see this movie are being very surprised by him. He shows a lot of color in this. He's really good in this.
It's great.
And he got to work with all these great people, so he had to raise his game.
Plain as Pie would like to ask, did you see Avatar, and what do you think of it being the #1 grossing film of all time?
Obviously, a question like that is very subjective. We all have different opinions about different things. I will be honest with you and tell you mine. Technically, Avatar's a game changer. No one has ever even conceived of 3D being something that doesn't come out at you, out of the screen, but that takes you in. The fact that James Cameron invented a 3D that literally puts you in the middle of the environment, three-dimensionally, is to me breathtaking, astonishing technology. As far as the movie goes, I could have sat there another 3 hours. I was extremely moved by it. I was compelled by the story. I loved it. And as much as it has, either today or tomorrow or this weekend, will become the #1 box office movie of all time, I don't have any comment on that. You know, the people decide what they're going to see 3 and 4 times, and I think it's amazing James Cameron now has those two, and Terminator, and Alien. I mean, it's astonishing. It's just astonishing. Somebody has to be the champ. Somebody has to knock the, you know. So he's knocked himself off the
right.
off the limb. But I say, great. You know, more power to him. We directors are all playing in the same band, and whether I like what a director did or didn't like what a director did, whether I'm compelled by the images or not, I root for him, man, because it's a really, really hard job. And we haven't even talked about how hard it is working with intractable studio people. And that's another thing that one has to learn how to do well, easily, and be very facile. Because they have very strong opinions as well. Sometimes they're not yours.
I footnoted something. I want to bring it up now because I don't want to forget anymore. Very early on when we were talking, you mentioned you like to shoot everything because you don't know what you're going to miss. Were you talking about shooting rehearsal?
Yeah. I almost always, unless an actor has told me, do not shoot a rehearsal, I almost always shoot a rehearsal because I can't tell you how much of Ashley's performance on the reaction side, I stole from letting the camera run. I'm really, really fast. I shoot fast. I shoot in less days than I need, and I do very few takes. People need to bring it first take, second take, because I'm moving on. God, what was the question? I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that is in fact what you meant, that you do shoot rehearsal and all those other sorts of things.
Yeah. But you know,
for people watching, for
yes.
filmmakers.
Yes. And again, I'll shoot rehearsal because I like to have the camera rolling. I don't want to miss something, particularly when I'm shooting comedy. You know, I know that every single scene, when I say, okay, roll camera, when I'm working with, for example, Tim Allen and Martin Short, it's going to be mayhem for 60, 90, 120 seconds before anybody says a line of dialogue. Right. I want to capture that mayhem for my own gag reel, but also because there might be some jewels and nuggets in there that I can use to make the scenes better. And
how much of that comedic timing that we've talked about a little bit is caught on the set, or how much of it is in the editing room with the editor?
Yeah. It's a great question. I can make the comedy music of a scene be anything I want because I now have, we edit because we cut. So a scene that should have pace as if it were live in the theater and doesn't, I can give it that pace in the editing room. The problem you have when you shoot comedy on film, be it television or movie, is that you don't usually hold for the laughs because you don't know if they're going to be there or not. You haven't had an out-of-town tryout. You have to trust, but you don't want in any way vitiate the scene as it's going on because there might be a laugh there. So very often you go to the movies and you don't hear 3 or 4 of the jokes because you're laughing at the first joke. That happens all the time. But to me, who grew up with teaches and loves comedy, timing is everything. Pace and timing are everything. So I try to get the actors to a point where they can bang it back and forth, not sacrifice the scene, and take care of anything that didn't work pacing-wise in the editing room.
Great. You know, it's funny, we didn't mention it in this interview, but of course you run the Lembeck Comedy Workshop.
Yes, actually, I assist my sister. My sister, Helene, runs the Harvey Lembeck Comedy Workshop. She and I have been doing it now for about 29 years. My dad did it for about almost 20 years before that. So apparently we're in our 47th or 40th year, something like that. And it is a going concern. It is fantastic. You know, we count among the people who have been through there for many, many years. John Larroquette, John Ritter, Penny Marshall, Robin Williams, a plethora of extraordinary people who were not those people when they joined us.
Great improv school. What made me think of it is because I studied there years ago, when you use the phrase hold for the laugh.
Yeah.
I just had a flash of Cal, one of the instructors there, hold for the laugh, then come over the top.
Right, sure. And you know, it's tricky because when you're doing a movie, we're not allowed to laugh behind the camera because it ruins the take.
Right.
And stuff is funny. But I will tell you that having worked with people like Marty Short, David Duchovny, a bawdy improviser, Stephen Merchant, Alan Arkin, you better, as the other actor in the scene, be on your toes because they will throw all kinds of unscripted lines in there from take to take. And I love that. I love that. Which is ironic because, again, coming from the theater, I love the written word, state of the words, particularly in the theater. That's what the author's sitting in there watching rehearsals for. But film is a different animal. And when you get these kind of people, they like to play, and you better let them play.
Let's see. Solar Geist would like to ask.
Solar Geist?
Solar Geist.
Geist.
Yeah. Oh. Who is your favorite director?
Wow. I don't know that I have a favorite director. Certainly I worship at the altar of Billy Wilder.
Well, if not favorite, that's a pretty high praise. You know?
Yeah, and Preston Sturges.
And what is it about their work that makes them, that puts them there?
Their directing of the actors, their telling of the story, their connection with humanity, of truth, that their comedy was never joke for joke's sake, but it came out of character and situation. The writing was brilliant in the movies in the 30s and 40s, the comedies. Those are my favorite movies, and so a lot of the directors from them, and not exclusive of these two guys, but those are the first two that came to mind. And by the way, there's a lot of people who believe Billy Wilder is one of the.
And if you had to recommend a film of theirs for the audience.
Oh, wow.
So they can see.
Anything with Tracy and Hepburn from the 30s and 40s. That would be who? George Cukor? The Apartment? Stalag 17? My goodness.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Just give them something to look at
Yeah.
in their little, add to their Netflix queue. Let's get to another IM. Let's see, what do we have? We have Tightrope. How much did you find yourself having to change the original script when you decided you want to take the job on? And how much on a project does the director change the script?
That's also a really smart question. You know, it's different from venue to venue. In TV, the director doesn't get to change the script. The writer, producer, showrunners do. In the theater, the director, again, makes suggestions, doesn't necessarily do the writing, but pitches back and forth with the author what might work better, and you see it and you try it. My best friend has worked with Neil Simon. Neil sits in the back of the theater with his yellow pad. He's writing all the time. He hands Jerry pages. They try that. This works. That doesn't work. In the movies, like I said, I really respect writers, especially closers. And by closers, I mean people who can really seal the deal. Not only can they be the voice that's missing of the female character and the comedy punch, but also the emotional and the story. I just love real writers, real closers. But my thumbprint is on every page. It's because it's the nature of the beast. You know, some writers, like I've heard Tommy Lee Jones speak, he likes to do what's written and nothing else. Now, if he gets into a scene with one of the other actors I've talked about, it's going to be interesting. Because those actors like to go right and left. I don't know what's going to happen there, and that's going to be interesting.
Talk about that question of two different acting styles.
But even with the great script that Randy Singer wrote, I rewrote lots of stuff based on how I was informed from the work the day before, how Billy likes to work, how Stephen likes to work, how Julie likes to work. Julie, every word. Stephen, do the line different, do this line different, do this line different. Billy, I want to change this, I want to change that. And me, as the custodian of the story, as I go through a schedule of a movie, I'm constantly rewriting because I've been informed by what's gone on before.
Now, is that your personal take, or do you have director friends that common? Do most directors rewrite, do you think?
Some depend on the writers, some depend on the actors, some like to do some writing as well. I love to put my thumbprint on it, not because I can, or because it gives my ego a boost that, oh, I wrote that joke. It's none of that. If I can, again, maximize what has to occur in a scene, or in a comedy setup, or whatever it is, even a description of a place, then that's my job. Because I think, oh, this will make it better. And I have to think like that. I have to not be afraid, as the wonderful Jimmy Burrows says, to add a leaf to the tree. That's my job.
Well, I know it's not about ego, because I remember from our first interview you talking about how you'll never give yourself a film by credit because of that reason. You know, because it's the whole team.
With all due respect to the great men and women directors who take the film by credit, and a lot of them do, I just have a different take on that, which is, it is not a film by me. My AD and my composer, and my God, my prop master on Tooth Fairy is just a genius. I mean, so many things that were created in props, he created in his head. I had nothing to do with it. So it's not a film by just me. Right. It's we're all in the lifeboat together. Right. I'm the boss, the buck stops with me, everybody looks to me for the ultimate choice, but I cannot do it without them. It's why I spend so much time figuring out who I'm taking with me.
Michael would like to ask you, and he refers to you as
Michael, he's just a regular name finally.
Exactly. And he refers to you as Mr. Lembeck, so we know who's
wow.
Mr. Lembeck, how is directing sitcom comedy different from directing big budget movie comedies? P.S. You directed one of my fave Mad About You episodes, The Test.
Oh, yeah. That was a great episode, wasn't it? My God, that was a great show. You know what was great about Mad About You? The writing was always good. The head writer, Vic Levin, and his staff, fabulous. And they really respected the actors, and very often there's a line in the sand between actors and writers that is not productive in any way, because they think one is trying to give it to the other, and that's always bad. And I always try to erase that line. Very important in half-hour comedy to do that. But one of the great things about Mad About You was I had the best writer on the floor with me, because Paul created the show and started the show, and also went up to the writer's room and worked in the writer's room with the guys. We could be a little fast and loose with the words. Out of respect to the writers, he always showed them what was written, but he could, if he wanted to, say, and I'm thinking about doing this, and then they would talk it out. But what a luxury for me to have the writer on the floor all day, and they were amazing together. There's a huge difference between doing half-hour comedy and doing film. I mean, obviously, visually, it's a bigger palette. You know, so we'll put the obvious aside for the moment. The biggest difference, not counting budget and time and the bigger palette, is the respect of the position. In TV, pretty much, it is a producer-writer's medium. That's just what it's become. It's just the nature of the beast. That's the devil you sleep with, so going in, don't have any pretensions about it anymore. In the movie business, it's the director's medium. It used to be the director's medium in television, and there are some great directors in television. Great. Why they're not being gobbled up in the movie business, I don't understand. But in the movie business, that director is still held in very, very high regard. They spend a lot of time choosing who the director is going to be, and my experience, won't speak for anybody else, is you're given the ultimate respect to do your job. That's the filmmaking process. The TV making process is entirely different, and it's driven by the writer-producer.
One other scene I want to ask you about now in Tooth Fairy is the scene where The Rock shrinks himself down, and like this kid sees him, and he's all freaked out.
Right, right.
And then, you know, the big cat.
Right.
Well, a normal cat, but to Dwayne's character.
He shrinks down to 6 inches, which was scale, 1/12
right.
scale.
And then, you know, he gets the skateboard and talk about the complexities or what was involved in shooting that.
The single most important thing was when I realized that I was going to be doing a movie in which a guy has to shrink down, I wanted to know what the appropriate scale should be, and I wanted to familiarize myself with, and I mean this literally, every single movie ever in which a person was shrunk in size. So my visual effects supervisor, Jake Morrison, who did 300, Speed Racer, a little thing called The It Movie with the Wachowski brothers.
Okay.
So he's been there. This guy, he's brilliant, young, and wonderful and lovely. Between the two of us, we looked at every movie ever, and what we realized was, when it works the best, when you are a small person in a large world, is when it was practical, except Tom Thumb, which was ridiculous, the Russ Tamblyn movie. Right. And the holy grail was The Borrowers, an English movie in which there are little people, and very often they're working with big objects and a big kitchen and this kind of thing. And what they did for that was they created oversized pieces, and it worked brilliantly. So that's what we did. So storyboards started flying off the wall, and new ones started coming in. And for those of you who are going to see the movie or have seen it, when Dwayne walks into that room, small, you shoot a plate is what you're going to put as a background and composite in with the person who stood in front of a green screen. Then you take the plate, it becomes what the green screen was, and now he's in front of that. Okay, so the plate was the boy's bedroom. So he walks into the bedroom, and then you build what it would be to scale of a 6-inch man. So I have a 35-foot, square-foot nightstand. I have a smart car under the bed. Right. I have a 75-square-foot bed he climbs up. Oh, wow. I have a 35-foot stuffed toy, a soccer ball about 9 feet tall, all to scale. And because he gets to interact with all this stuff for real, people ooh and ah during the scene. When he's walking amongst the tall furniture, it's him walking against a green screen. Actually, the camera moves, he's not moving at all. Then you shoot the plate, you shoot the real furniture, and then you put him in front of it, and it's beautiful. A lot of split screens. When he climbs up on the bed, he's standing over the boy who's sleeping. It's a brilliant split. I mean, that pillow looks like it's right there. But in fact, the screen splits. The big pillow, oversized pieces on one side, the real pillow with the sleeping boy is in front of a green screen. So it's very complicated, but because we went with oversized pieces, most movies like this cost 100 to 150 million to do. Our budget was 45 million, and we brought it in under.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You know, and it's when I was talking before about knowing your actors when they come in, what you were talking about now with your research and seeing every movie whenever there was a short person, it's that kind of attention to detail in addition to your passion, you know, that I appreciate and respect in watching your work.
Oh, thanks. I just care so damn much. You know, I just always want to do the best I possibly can do. I think I told the story last time, so I'll do a real tab version of it. When I was shooting Friends on the Warner Brothers lot, Michael Jordan was there.
Yes, you did tell the story.
Right.
It's a great story.
Thing, and so I won't repeat the whole story. But the thing that separates Carol Burnett, Nathan Lane, and Michael Jordan, and all the people who are really the standouts in what they do.
I don't even want you to tell it because I want them to watch it in the first interview. It's really great.
Yeah, but I feel like Michael Jordan was, and you know, the tagline was, "I don't practice mistakes." Right. I like to. Every moment of the day is as important to me as the next and the former. and I want every day to be so joyous, and I want everything to be as good as I possibly can. I try never, ever to compromise. Now, whether I fail or succeed in telling the story is something else, but I'm trying my hardest every second of the day, and I don't ever give up until I'm collapsed. Or why do it?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Tightrope, what would you consider the optimal number of takes for any given scene in order to, I think it goes on a little bit more, in order to have the best range for edits? Well, you said before you don't like to do too many takes.
Right. Know that Clint Eastwood barely does one take. He shoots the rehearsal, you're lucky if you get take one. It's for me, it's not about how many takes to get the performance or not. It's once you get it, you move on. And if I've gotten it in take 2 or 3, that's it. It's really, really rare that I do more than, I mean, 5 or 6 takes is a bad day for me. But I have to take care of the actor, and if they're not getting there. And many actors work many different ways. There was a very famous actor who learns his lines during the takes. And you know you're going to get between 20 and 30 before you got it. Right. There are some actors who insist on multiple takes. I don't need a lot of takes for variety. I want the take that told me the story. And once I have it, I move to the other angle, to the other angle, to the other angle, and when I have the story well told, I am not one of those guys who goes into the room and wants a lot of choices. And a lot of directors I really respect are. I'm just not one of them.
So other angle coverage then. Do you cover every scene the same, where you're going to get masters, close-up, and
no.
everything, or do you pick and choose?
No. Each scene needs to be told visually a certain way. I'm very old-fashioned in that a lot of the times I like to let it sit in one. Nothing makes me happier than seeing the 2 people in the comedy scene in the scene all the time. You know, Jackie Gleason, Art Carney, Lucy and Desi, Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges all the time in a 3-shot, the great comedies of the 30s and 40s. You got to choose what you wanted to see, and you got to see the comedy both active and reactive. We've become a medium in which it's cut, 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 cut. I'm not a big subscriber to that. However, having said that, every scene is a different story. Every scene has to have a comedic premise to be funny. But I need to make sure that however I'm shooting it, it's not necessarily, well, I shot that scene like that, so I have to shoot this scene like this. Master, intermediate, close-ups, Jack Warner haircuts. Jack Warner haircut is here to about here. So each story, each shot, each angle, and each piece of coverage is not frivolously done just so I have a lot of stuff.
In the editing room, right?
Yeah, I just want to tell the story as I want to tell the story. Wonderful. But I really do love letting the camera sit there and let the actors play in it. Great. And by the way, one of the great, do that, it's a good idea. You know, I really respect Mr. Spielberg, and I know that he loves to do the same thing. He loves to sit in the master and let the audience decide who to look at. I love that idea. Great.
I mentioned that there was a cat in this movie, right?
Yes, Billy the Cat is the cat in I Am Legend, I believe, and he's a genius. My only other cat experience is the cat I wanted to strangle, literally snap his neck during the shoot. Because I spent an entire day, Vic Levin from Mad About You and I are in New York shooting an episode in which Murray the dog has to go through an obstacle course. While he's doing it, a cat comes around the side of a table. This is all he's got to do. Come around the side of a table and cut. That's all I need to do. I was told I had the greatest cat in the Tri-County area. Jersey, Connecticut, and New York, whatever the hell.
He's won awards, right?
Oh, right. Never came out, and all Vic Levin and I did was we sat there, and we just got darker and darker. How do you want to kill him? How can we torture this cat? Because he was ruining our day. It got to be just black comedy.
Right.
This cat, as long as he was being fed tuna all day long, I'm sure he gained 18 pounds on the shoot, anything. And when he was full, he went to sleep, and day's over. But he was, I mean, they blew up a house around this cat in the movie prior. When I saw that, I said, get him.
Right.
By the same token, I had a bunch of dogs in this. Right. One of the dogs I loved the most bit my nose and made me bleed.
Oh. Wow.
He's in the movie. He's just very enthusiastic. He's a really stupid boxer, but he had this great face. And, oh, I love this dog. Ow! Right. It was one of those moments. Right.
Oh, that's great.
Well, so, oh, God, I have so many animal stories.
Cats,
man,
dogs, kids, you've worked
Camels,
with everything. Camels.
Possum.
Let me get to another question here. Fa would like to ask you, would you
mind?
Fa, yeah.
Well, I have 17 stories having to do with the word fa, but go ahead.
Fa, would you mind telling us about this project, viewer image submitted, and Here it is, right there.
Who sent that in? What's the name?
Bob.
Oh man, somebody either knows me or something. Wow, look at that. That's from the teen magazines. Okay, so in 1977, I'm doing the hippest show on TV, the first really out-of-the-box show called Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. Mm-hmm. So cool to be on. Hair down to here, by the way. I was kind of doing a spoof on Clique, on Geraldo Rivera when he first broke out. Took himself very seriously and hilarious.
As opposed to now, right?
He used to be a great reporter. I don't know what happened to him. So I auditioned for and got a part in the Crofts Saturday morning TV show, live action, called The Croft Super Show, in which I was hired to play a character named Captain Cool, of Captain Cool and the Kongs, a rock and roll group not that far away from Kiss in look, who hosted the 3 live shows, which were Magic Mongo, Electra Woman and Dyna Girl, and some other big monster stupid thing that became very popular. Well, Captain Cool and the Kongs became cover of Newsweek on every teen magazine. We had our own record deal, Epic Records. It was we got gigantic. 16 magazine. I mean, oh my God. So the image that you should put back up on the screen is from 1977, from Captain Cool and the Kongs. Right. So I'm down on the left, as you can plainly see. Right. Mickey McNeil, the drummer for Three Dog Night, is over on the right-hand side with all the hair. Debbie Klinger of the Klingers, the Mormons from Utah, is the girl on the blue top. What's her name? Up on the right, above Mickey McNeil, played Witchy Poo from the Croft Super Show, the Croft Show. And up on top was Bert Summer, who passed away a couple of years ago, who sang at Woodstock. And you can see him on video. We were Captain Cool and the Kongs. We were on Saturday mornings. We were the biggest show on television. And I was asked to now host with Captain Cool and the Kongs our own variety show on ABC. That's how big it got. They want to give us our own variety show on ABC. I said, I don't want to be Captain Cool my whole life. And they pulled our record deal, killed everything, replaced us with the Bay City Rollers. Wow. Oh, it was cold out there, man. And all because Fred Silverman said, we want you to do this nighttime series. And I said, I don't want to be Captain Cool the rest of my life. I said, no. And they said, oh, you're out. The whole thing is out.
Now, this just came up on you right here without expecting it. Does that happen during the course of the month, year? How many times is Captain Cool references?
You know, here's the thing. I will walk into an office to meet somebody at a studio, and I'll be sitting there, and someone will do something like this to me. Okay, so she'll see you now, Captain. It haunts me. It follows me everywhere. And the person who just sent that thing in, where did they get those pictures? Why do they have them? I wish I could ask them questions. They have to have been a kid and kept it. Why are you keeping it? Why do you have that stuff?
Who asked? You have an IM from Michael Lembeck? You know, like you're asking, you're going to IM
My
them.
goodness, what are you doing with that stuff?
Now, speaking of cold, you recently, since the last time you were here, you shot an independent feature in the very cold Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah.
Called The Clique.
Right. There's what do they call them? Tweens, between teenagers and whatever. A tween book, the biggest selling book like in the history of the planet for 12 to 15-year-old girls, called The Clique. It's basically Mean Girls on steroids, but with a far better message.
Well, it's funny. Let me just interrupt real quick, because I see an IM that relates to it. Dancer224, did you see Mean Girls before directing The Clique, and did you try to do anything similar or different?
No, I never saw Mean Girls, and I didn't care what they did. I wanted to have my own thing, and since I was doing most of the writing, I better come up with something smart.
Right.
But we shot that on. Somebody had a really great idea to shoot a back-to-school movie, which puts you in the heat of September, in January in New England. Okay, and we averaged 6 degrees every day, and one day, as I think I've told you, the equipment froze. And we were 6 below or more below when wind chill factor.
So what does that do to your budget, to your day?
Well, here, my budget and my day sounded like this. I have $4 million and 20 days to make the movie. Yikes, that's fast. That's fast, especially when you're frozen stiff. But we got it done. You get it done. Again, once you make the deal, you don't get to complain. And the deal with the devil was New England, dead of winter, 20 days, $2 million. You can't have anybody rewrite the script because there's a strike going on. Go. I love that shit. Give it, let's go, bring it.
Now, Mean Girls is a good comparison. If you're out there and you saw Mean Girls, this would be a good movie for you to see.
Yeah.
How did you get into the mind of these, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls?
Now,
as
the
their
great
director?
thing about working with these 5, 13, 14-year-old girls is, because they're so new, I literally could tell them to do something and they just did it. It's not like being with an adult who would say, well, why would I go over there?
Right.
You know, why would I say it like that? These girls just said, okay, and I had no time. So I came in every single day blocked, something I don't usually do, blocked and written and ready. You go there, you go there, you go there, roll, shoot, cover, out. And also we shot digitally. So it was easier to light, faster to light, and because they're 15 and alabaster and gorgeous, didn't need a lot of work.
Right.
So we were able to really fly. And I also had Clint Eastwood's gaffer. I had my crew from Californication, so I was in really great hands in that area.
Now, Tooth Fairy just came out this past Friday.
Yeah.
Right? Any last thoughts on it? And before we wrap up?
I can only tell you that you will have the most delightful time. It really should attract the same kind of crowd that Shrek attracted. Dates, older, younger, families, kids, it's for everyone. And you will cry 3 times, you will laugh 18 times. It's such a delight. And being with Julie and Billy and Steven and Dwayne is great. It's great.
Yeah, well, it really was. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it, and I recommend it to anyone who fits those categories Michael just mentioned. Any other projects coming up in the pipeline?
It certainly seems like it. We're certainly heading that way. We'll know soon enough.
Fair enough.
I'm actually jumping into a pilot. All of a sudden, 5 movies in 7 years, back into Pilotville. I'm going to dig this. I'm going to do a pilot with my old running mate, Valerie Bertinelli. I'm going to direct her.
From One Day at a Time.
From One Day at a Time.
Yeah.
Jane Leaves from Frasier. Wendy Malick. And Betty White.
Wow.
I know. What?
Well, like you said to me last time, I'm going to have you back to find out how that goes.
Right. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. It was a pleasure having you for round 2.
It's always a blast.
You know what, though? I see one more
This
question.
just in.
This just in.
in.
We like to end interviews on a certain question, and I didn't say it, so
Oh, so somebody's telling you, hey,
That's right.
Nerdwad, you forgot to ask this question.
Nerdwad, you forgot to answer this question. I asked you last time, maybe you'll have a different answer for me. We like to ask, what is your favorite set speak term?
What's my favorite set speak term?
Now, last time, a lot of people answered back to one or martini shot or whatever.
Oh, so it needs to be like a 1 or 2 word expression? Any
expression that is commonly spoken around a film set. But you had a very original answer the last time.
Well, they've all been carved into wood. A sound guy, all the things he's never heard anybody say before that I say all the time, he actually carved into wood and gave me as a gift at the end. Stuff like I had a wonderful camera operator named Robert Steckel from Montreal, who shot Connie and Carla, my operator. And I constantly said to him and to most other people, if there was a moment of where they screwed up, I'd say, "Stecco's last day, everybody." That was one of them. That was one of my favorites. Everybody knew that I loved that person because they just screwed up, and I said, and they're going to be fired.
Right.
Stecco's last day. I wish I could think. There's just a whole raft of them, but that was one of my favorites. Fill in the blank with the name.
That's right.
Last day, everybody. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I actually said to Tim, I yelled to Tim once. He finished the scene. I said, "Oh, thank God, that's something I can actually put in the movie."
Right.
That made him laugh a lot.
Right.
What is it I said? Oh my God, there's so much. I wish I had them at my fingertips because I even think they're funny.
Right.
I just come up with them at the spur of the moment. How about being in the same country as your mark?
Right.
That's another one. I'm not going to think of
being
all
in the
of
same country as your mark, I think is a good one to go out on.
Yeah,
I like
fine.
That one. Yeah.
Fine.
That is great.
And by the way, I'd like to give a little shout out to what's it called? What's it called? Drench H2O. Drink Drench. I have been. It's quenching Drench. I'm not very good at this. Take 2. When I'm really dry and hot after a long, tough interview, I drink Drench. That's not easy to say, but I've just said it. I drink Drench. It quenches my thirst. I think it will drench yours.
Well, on behalf of Drench and Evo Energy Drink, we thank you for coming on once again, Michael Lembeck. That is going to do it for this edition of Filmnut. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Come on, I'm just getting warmed up.